Sorcerer is famous for being William Friedkin's reimagining of the George Clooney classic, The Wages of Fear. But being Friedkin, he didn't simply choose to tell the same story, and instead he enlisted a great production team to make it work for that decade. Now the difference was it was in colour, whereas the original was in black and white. And he chose actor Roy Scheider, who was a successful Hollywood star from his roles in films like Jaws and Marathon Man. Two stars Jackie Scanlon, Juan Dominguez, a driver who's marked for execution after his Irish-American gang robs a church and wounds a priest. Other casting choices including Bruno Kramer, Francisco Rabal and Amadou. It's long been classed as a remake of The Wages of Fear by many, but in interview, Friedkin himself denied this was the case and that he'd used the book to influence him. Sorcerer was originally conceived as a small-scale side project to Friedkin's next major film at the time, The Devil's Triangle, with a modest $2.5 million budget. The director later opted for a more ambitious production, which he envisaged as his magnum opus. The cost of Sorcerer was earmarked at $15 million, but escalated to $22 million following a grueling production schedule with various filming locations, primarily in the Dominican Republic, and conflicts took place as well between Friedkin and his production crew. Two major studios combined forces, that's Universal and Paramount, following escalating expenses during production. Now, the film depicts four outcasts from varied backgrounds living in a Central American village assigned to transport two trucks loaded with aged, poorly kept dynamite that is sweating. Its dangerous basic ingredient being nitroglycerin. Yes, I know, it does sound exactly like a plot of Wages of Fear. Sorcerer is a distinctive, gritty and gloomy movie though. A determined slow burner, resisting the traditional structure of narrative and central character. It involves four guys in four desperate situations, each introduced in leisurely vignettes. New Jersey mobster Scanlon, Roy Scheider, crooked Parisian businessman Manzon, Bruno Kramer, Mexican hitman Nilo, Francisco Rabal, and Middle Eastern terrorist Qassem, played by the Moroccan actor Amadou. For individual reasons, they all need to disappear and lie low for a while. Scanlon's backstory section is a superbly suspenseful heist scene in which he robs a church during a marriage ceremony. Now, this grimly brutal sequence is in some ways the most effective thing in the film. The four men fetch up in a godforsaken, fly-blown oil drilling encampment in South America, where everyone has a reason to avoid talking about their past. But there's not much to do but drink and go half mad with boredom. One Riley says that the barman, Carlos, is an ex-Reichsmarschall. Right, Carlos. A catastrophic wildfire breaks out and it can only be capped with the nitroglycerin, which the corrupt and incompetent oil company has stored incorrectly far from the site. Handled roughly, it could blow sky high. Now the firm needs a group of guys greedy or desperate enough to accept its offer for a large sum to drive the nitroglycerin to the fire in a couple of flatbed trucks through terrifying terrain, very slowly and very carefully. Now our quartet take the challenge and it becomes a nightmare worthy of Werner Herzog. One of the most interesting pieces of lore about the film is how that the prologue was chopped out, and some of the scenes establishing how each man ended up in the jungle were sampled as flashbacks, all of it done by the film's European distributor without Friedkin's knowledge. He rightly raised hell about it, much shorter international cut than it was, but that distributor was onto something. That structure worked to better effect in many a thriller. Now this isn't Scheider's best performance, or for that matter, Friedkin's best film, well, no matter the degree of difficulty that it took to make it. It's filmed mostly in the Dominican Republic and Mexico. The legend of Sorcerer, of course, is that it is a Hollywood Fitzcarraldo, an apocalypse now, without Vietnam combat, a masterpiece and an epic undertaking about which we say, they just don't make them like that anymore. Now, Friedkin appointed Wallen Green as the film's screenwriter. The director got to know Green in the 1960s and was since highly impressed with his work on Sam Peckinpah's western The Wild Bunch. Friedkin described Green as a multilingual person, fluently speaking French, Spanish, Italian and German, as well as having an encyclopedic knowledge of classical music and literature. Prior to writing the script, Green expressed enthusiasm about the project and suggested that Friedkin read Gabriel Garcia Marquez's novel 100 Years of Solitude. Now, Friedkin described it as another life-changing work, which served as the work print for their adaptation of Wages of Fear. Friedkin chose Dick Bush as his director of photography after seeing the film version of the rock opera Tommy, directed by Ken Russell, and after finding out that Bush had also filmed Gustav Mahler's biography as well as collaborated with Lindsay Anderson, whom Friedkin regarded highly. Scheider's then wife Cynthia Scheider was an assistant film editor who had previously worked, of course, with Bud Smith on The Exorcist. Now, Sorcerer delves deeper into the psyche of the characters than The Wages of Fear, especially Roy Scheider's character, Jackie Scanlon, who is clearly modelled on Humphrey Bogart in This Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Scanlon is an everyman who serves as the audience's eyes throughout the film, and he's also more grounded than the crazed, desperate miner portrayed by Bogart. You feel his desperation, but it's all internalised. The desert sequences near the end of the film are deeply hallucinatory. You feel you are hallucinating just like Scanlon, and at times it feels like a slightly more contained Apocalypse Now. Now, the main theme of the film is fate, which Friedkin considered an evil wizard. Hence the title. One of the two trucks is also called Sorcerer. It's all about how destiny always has a way of deciding things before you can turn them around. It's a deeply pessimistic worldview, and what with Watergate exposing abuse of power in the highest echelons of government, perhaps the viewing public of the time simply wanted more hopeful films like Star Wars or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, the failure of Sorcerer with critics and audiences at the box office was an early blow to the new Hollywood movement that had been created in the 1970s, which would be cremated with the failure of Heaven's Gate in 1980, a similarly pessimistic and over-budgeted film. The title of Friedkin's film also worked against it, with the distributors eventually including a disclaimer, not a film about the supernatural. Viewed today, Sorcerer, though, deserves to be considered among the director's greatest achievements. Scheider was rarely better, and the film showcases a truly international cast who all bring their A-game, although with the exception of Amadou, they were not Friedkin's first, their second, or even his third choices. The pulsating score by Tangerine Dream completely changes how Hollywood thought of electronic music and was subsequently used as the temp score for many films. Sorcerer is a stunning reimagining of a masterpiece, and one that crucially doesn't try to replicate what came before it. Instead, it follows its own dangerous path. Now, when Friedkin worked on the film, I have a direct quote from him from the time. "The film I hoped to be remembered by. I have a great fondness for Sorcerer. More than any other film, its restoration is like Lazarus. It looks just the way it looked to me when I looked through the lens of the camera." Arrogant though he was at times, he was still a master director and produced this exhilarating cinematic treat that we can now enjoy in 4K UHD. Sorcerer comes to the collection as a 4K Blu-ray combo with the film on the 4K UHD with the following supplemental features. We've a new 4K digital restoration with 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio, and that's approved by the director William Friedkin, an alternate original theatrical 2.0 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack. We've got a 1 4K UHD disc of the film presented in Dolby Vision HDR, and 2 Blu-rays with the film and these special features. Friedkin Uncut 2018, a full-length documentary by Francesco Zippel featuring interviews with Friedkin, screenwriter Wallen Green, filmmakers Wes Anderson and Francis Ford Coppola, and others. New conversation between filmmaker James Gray and film critic Sean Fennessy. Conversation from 2015 between Friedkin and filmmaker Nicholas Winding Refn. Archival audio interviews with Green and editor Bud Smith from the collection of Griela Dagnalo Valan, the author of William Friedkin 2003. Behind the scenes footage, a trailer, and an essay by the film critic Justin Chang. And the cover art is very striking. It's by Nassim Higson. aided by Tangerine Dream's otherworldly synth score. Friedkin turns each bump in the road into a tour de force of cold sweat tension, conjuring a hauntingly nihilistic vision of a world ruled by chance and fate. Sorcerer has a running time of 121 minutes and comes in an aspect ratio of 185:1. It's goodbye, and above all, good Criterion viewing.